Hello, and welcome to another episode of Why This Beer. I'm your host, Darren Binnema, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Azlan Graves. Today, we're thrilled to chat with Kerry Dyson from Brewhall in Vancouver. Kerry's been crafting award-winning beers for years, and in this episode, we dive into his creation, the slice of Paradise Yuzu Wit Beer. We'll explore his expertise in brewing with fruit, his unique approach to collaboration beers, and how he keeps the passion for brewing alive while creating dozens of new beers every year. We also touch on his trip to the Czech Republic, the local drinking culture there, and wrap it up with insights on the BC beer industry and the importance of education. And we forgot to mention it during the episode, but Kerry has been nominated for Brewer of the Year by the Brewers Journal 2 years running in 2022 and 2023. We're hoping he gets it this year in 2024. So without further ado, let's get into it with Kerry Dyson from Brewhall.
Hey all, welcome to Why This Beer. This is where we're taking a trip around BC, chatting with those behind the bevies we all love. It's the sassy sippers, the ingredient savants.
Wow.
And everybody. Yeah.
The bearded and the non-bearded alike.
Yeah. And here you are in a beard sandwich.
Yeah.
All right. So today we've got Kerry Dyson from Brewhall. As a bit of an intro, Kerry, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey in brewing and your first exposure? How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, so I started home brewing initially with mead. Like that was the thing that kind of got me keen on fermentation. My parents used to keep bees, so started by making mead, and then eventually moved to Vancouver and realized that honey is incredibly expensive if you're using good quality honey. So I was starting to look at into brewing beer, but the one time that it kind of clicked for me was a cask of R&B's watermelon wheat ale in 2011, and I had this one beer, and it was oh, beer's not just fizzy and yellow, and it can kind of be anything.
Was that at a cask event at R&B, or was that back when
it was
the
at
whip?
I had just moved to Vancouver, and I joined a skeptics club. So it was at the old railway club upstairs, and they just happened to have a cask ale on. And
I think it was Tuesday nights at the railway. They'd have cask night.
Yeah. It was, and it just it happened to be.
Yeah, crazy. I wonder if that was when that would have been maybe when was Brent Mills brewing at R&B at that time.
I think so.
Yeah.
And this was just really early on in my trajectory for craft beer. So I was just enamored by.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Brent Mills, Four Winds, founder.
Yeah.
So, and I think maybe he worked with Todd Graham still at that point, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You're an archive, Azlan. Archivist.
Yeah. Useless facts. This man right here.
I tried to rebrew this beer, and the first time I brewed it, it absolutely worked and it was perfect. And then the second time I got infected, and the third time it was infected. And it was one of those small things. If the first one didn't work, I'd probably be a baker or something entirely different.
Yeah, it just happened to work. You're like, this is magic.
Get lucky on the first try, and then now you're just cursed for life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of green in this life now.
So let's talk about that watermelon. That's a pretty. I feel once you get rid of the sweetness, it's a pretty neutral product. How did you just literally cram a bunch of cubed up watermelon in there?
Yeah. So first time it was an incredible amount, because I no frame of reference, and I couldn't find any recipes for it at all.
Right.
So just a ton of watermelon, and it came out a little bit more cucumbery than I would like.
Yeah.
Because when you pull out all the sweetness from watermelon, it's just kind of like a cucumber.
Yeah.
But it was delicious and good.
Yeah, not going to say who, but somebody told me if you want to make a watermelon sour, put in cucumber and add hibiscus.
Oh.
I don't know about that. I agree with that at all.
Yeah. I don't know. Never tried it, but
yeah. I think there's a couple of things like that you'll hear and be like, oh, if you want peach, use apricot. And
hey, I'm a hard proponent of the apricot.
That's true.
versus peach. Yeah, more peachy than peach itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Cool. So you're just doing a little home brewing, and then what kind of pushed you into like the professional brewing world?
So I was in school at the time. I was at UBC. I joined the UBC Brewing Club, and then also joined Camera Vancouver at the time, and decided to finish my degree. Didn't want to just kind of give up on the years and years of education. So I finished my my degree at UBC, and then immediately applied to like literally every single brewery in Vancouver. And I was just going through like old emails today to prep for this a little bit, looking at it, and there's like a couple of like really nice emails from like, I don't know, legends in the beer industry, and other people just absolutely wouldn't give me the time of day. But like, Ben Coley sent me an email, and Ian from Strange Fellows, and just like a handful of folks, because I was at that point
just green.
Nobody would have known.
Yeah.
And they're like, looks like you're really passionate. We're 3 people, and we're good. Thanks, no thanks.
Yeah, I have a similar email thread from David before Powell opened, of me like begging for a job.
He's like, I'm not paying myself, so I'm not going to pay you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So eventually I was able to volunteer at Bridge Brewing in North Van. Did that for a while, and then after a while they hired me on as a brewer. And I think that was one of those like interesting, like there's a lot of times that there's like a trajectory in your life that could go on one way or another. There's another person who was hired on at the same time that I was volunteering, and he was on the back end of a packaging line, and he ended up doing that for a couple of years. And because I had volunteered and just wasn't getting paid, it kind of like accelerated my career, because I went straight into brewer instead of having to kind of put in my time on a canning line or a bottling line.
Oh, okay.
And I mean,
so
when you have a good guy in packaging, you just don't want them to leave.
It's incredibly important. It's absolutely a ton of work for sure.
It's like, oh yeah, you got a good understanding of automation, seam teardowns. Like, no, you could just stay there.
Stay here forever, please. Never leave, please.
The curse of being good.
All the low fills you want.
Nice. Who were you working with at Bridge? With Bridge at this time?
That would been Jeremy Taylor.
Nice.
So Jeremy Taylor with Two Crows in Halifax now. So he brought me on and was working there for a while, and then briefly we had Hamish, who's now with Rewind.
Right.
Yeah.
He was there for a little bit, then after Hamish, I got promoted up to head brewer there.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. And then so.
Was that at the time when you were there? Did you guys? Part of what I remember Bridge was like when Side Cut IPA came out. Was that coming out when you were there, or prior to that?
That was. I think that was because I was trying to track down timelines, because I think it's like interesting, but that was probably around like 2016, and it was like, I don't know if it was the first. It was definitely like one of the first, if not the first, hazy IPA in Vancouver, and it was so challenging. Trying to kind of like educate people at the same time and not like talk down to them, be like, no, this is on purpose, I promise. Like, I swear it's supposed to look like this.
I remember it being one of the first hazy IPAs. I don't even think it was called hazy IPA at that time, but like New England IPA or something. I'm not sure what it was called at the time, but like, I mean, people might argue theirs was first, but I remember that would be like probably the first bigger commercial example of that going to the market, and people being like, we're doing one too. Like everyone, it was because everyone had one in a tank, like, or like was trialing it on a small scale. And I just remember people thinking like, oh, we're going to be the first. And then it just like, there it is. It's out there. And
well, it's also kind of like the Wild Wild West. Like it was so interesting, because I don't like, the secret wasn't out. Like nobody knew how to do it. So I don't know, for us at Bridge, it was like batch 1, batch 2 was really good. 3 was like a little bit clearer than it should have been.
Right.
Batch 4 was crystal clear. And it was just like such a struggle going like, it's like, no, it was supposed to be hazy. Like, don't drink this clear one. It's fine.
Yeah.
So
that was challenging. Yeah. There wasn't much information out there about how to do it. And like, were you guys trialing different yeasts, or kind of trying to, it was like, do you switch yeasts, or you just kind of make the yeast that work and I know that
Yeah.
for when we were at Yellow Dog trying to come up with a hazy IPA at that time, we were just trying to make our other English yeast work for it. But it was, we ended up having to switch strains.
We were pretty intentional about the yeast. That didn't change throughout because I think we knew that was the correct route for it.
Right.
And then it was just kind of like all of the other components. And I think it's kind of like greater than the sum of its parts. Like if you have a ton of like oats and wheat, that's not going to get you enough. That's not going to give you stable haze.
No.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to like piece together all of these different components and like build it up to be something that's like delicious, but also stable haze and looks good and smells good and all of these other components.
Did you have any weird failed experiments with active fermentation dry hopping?
Yep. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I don't know. Like I want brewing to be like a safe environment for people. I don't want people to get injured, but I also think there's like a tiniest amount of like trial by fire. Like you got to take off the tri-clamp on the wrong side of a butterfly just once, and hopefully it's on like on a cold water tank.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, like an active, if you don't see like active yeast or active fermentation dry hop, if you don't like understand it, you're not gonna give it enough respect, and then you'll respect it right after.
Yeah. As you clean off the ceiling, you'll be pretty respectful of it.
Oh
yeah. We've only had one at Brewhall, and it was for like a dry hop on a farmhouse, like on a saison with like laurel hops. And at Brewhall, we 12-inch ports on the top.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
And just like slam down the port as quick as you can because you can see it rising and you're like frantic. Like, and there's just no way in the world. And I got 7 out of 8 the clamps on, and just one was just open enough. There was like a little like laser beam of foam that was just spraying out.
Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. So yes, we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of trials along the way.
Yeah. I think I'm glad that in general I feel like a lot of process and procedure has moved along past the we're just gonna open it up on day 2.
Yeah. You'd hope so, yeah.
And just like dump it in quick.
Yeah. Rousing the tanks a couple times really helps quite a bit.
Rousing the tanks, adding some firm cap or hop aid or whatever.
Whatever,
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, we definitely had that happen a handful of times.
The Wild West on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So some formative times at Bridge. I guess probably big growth at that time for that brewery as well when you were there. I'm assuming.
I think by now they've probably had 5 brew houses, because they just keep on expanding, and it's kind of like when I was there, I think it was like every like 2 or 3 years they would get a new brew house.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I think they're kind of in a good place now, but it was just like
because they've got like a 50 heck.
I think now it's a
3
50
vessel 50 heck. I think I was chatting with Liam, who just took over as their head brewer there.
I was brewing there when we were on the 10, and then we went from a 10 to a 30-ish, 20-ish kind of like oversized mash tun, undersized kettle situation. But yeah, it was I don't know, it definitely, I think they produced a ton of good brewers. I think Jeremy's phenomenal. Ryan Voigt came out of there as well. Miguel, who's now brewing out of Winnipeg. Like there's some really good brewers that came out of there. But it's definitely like a very challenging environment to produce beer all the time, always at that level.
Yeah. And then opportunity came to start at Brewhall, I guess.
Yeah. So I'd worked with, because Bridge did a handful of collabs with Tap and Barrel, including the Blood Orange Bourbon.
Right.
So that's where I initially met Ryan Craig, who's the beverage director for Tap. And then he gave me a call, I think probably, he gave me a call. It would have been 2018 or so, 2017. Saying like, hey, there's this very new, very cool opportunity. Do you want to go for a beer sometime? So I got brought on just before, like we didn't really have a concept at that point, just an empty building.
Right.
And then that eventually became Brewhall.
Well, because wasn't it steel toed?
Yeah.
So what was
Yeah. So we took over from Steel Toad, and we just bought like the assets. So we didn't take any of like the business side of it. So we had this big, massive space, and then small-ish brewery. It's a like 12 10 barrel brew house.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like
crammed a lot in there. Like it's
floor to
Yeah.
ceiling.
Yeah. So we've got the double stack tanks and the whole set. But we run it like pretty hard. And the big thing is like I'm not really willing to sacrifice on tank time, so it's like a really tight production schedule. So we're draining a bright tank or a serving vessel to transfer beer from the fermenter to brew it to that fermenter, all usually within 24 hours or so.
Right.
Because if the beer needs time, I'd rather give it time.
Yeah. Cool.
So
nice.
Yeah. So maybe you could talk more about like Brewhall and kind of the structure, because it is part of Tap and Barrel, or Tap, like the whole that group, and like what's that relationship like, and does that mean sometimes they'll be like, hey, we really want this beer for like, you know, a Lululemon, I don't know, event or run or something like that, or is it less structured than that?
No. Yeah, it's much less kind of it's a really good relationship. I think the one of the key reasons is we're kind of too small.
Mm-hmm.
If we were bigger, then we could probably accommodate more of the tap and barrels and sell more beer through them. But we're not a massive brewery. We just truly don't have the capacity to. So we're able to do some really like cool and interesting stuff at the brewery without being like obligated to like, hey, we need you to be, I don't know, 4 core beers and 4 rotators at these like massive restaurants that would absolutely just like haul. It's just too much volume for us.
Yeah.
So and Tap and Barrel's always been focused on craft beer and like supporting the community. So this kind of gives us that opportunity to like, well, not like give back to the community, but like really work with the partners that we worked with and bring them into this brewing space and be like, hey, we have a smaller production facility than you do. Is there anything wacky and cool that you want to do on this smaller system that you'd never be able to do on your massive production schedule? So, but it's very good. It's and like, I very much appreciate the fact that like having Tap behind us like allows us to brew all these like really interesting beers.
It allows you to buy that fruit puree from Timbuktu and do all those wacky stuff.
Yeah,
right? That makes sense.
Easy from
at
Japan.
a smaller scale, you know, it's like, okay, this beer made us some money, but this one's like, it's not gonna it's gonna cost us money in the end. But like in the grand scheme, you're just kind of having fun and doing cool stuff to bring people into the restaurant, because it's like a massive location you're at is like hundreds of seats, like tons. It's huge.
3 of those hundreds.
300.
And like, it's nice you don't have to make a production beer, so to speak. Like you don't have to,
because like that was what it was like at Bridge. We sold an incredible amount of the Blood Orange bourbon that would be like, I don't know, 2 or 3 out of every 4 batches, like the vast majority. And I think that's shifted for them now. It's a little bit more stable, but while I was there, it was like, that's the beer you brew kind of every single day. And I don't know, I don't think it's super sustainable if you're like kind of stuck on only having one product that like really is your breadwinner. So didn't really want that. So we have like a pretty good split between our 3 best sellers. It's like relatively even. And then we're coming up the new beer kind of this year we slowed it down a bit. It's still like every 2 weeks we'll come out with a new beer.
Just
That's
casually.
Crazy. Just 26 new beers a year. No big deal.
Which kind of leads to the next thing. So like catalog wise, you're at like over 130 different beers.
I counted. I think we're kicking around 150.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just scrolling through your website and I was like, this goes on forever. And then it like, I got to I'm like, oh, this is the end. And then it's like, it loaded like a whole another page of beers. And it was like, oh my goodness, there's so many different kind of beers that you guys have made.
How much of that is like does it get fatiguing just trying to create something like all the time? I remember the first year I was at Main Street, I think I did something like 40 something different beers, and it's like at a certain point I was just like, I don't know, let's just redo that one, but we're going to change a few hops.
Change the hop something. No, I don't know. I think I kind of approach it maybe a bit differently, because well, first off, we've got this massive tasting room that we want to have beer in it. Like it moves really quickly,
Right.
Which allows us a lot of flexibility. But I don't know, we try to make like our space like really open and also like a bit of an education space for anybody else in the restaurant. So we'll do like regular brewery tours with Tap and Barrel and
Nice.
try to get like all of the bar team into the space and like try to make it really open. Say like, hey, if you've got a crazy idea for a beer, like we have the technology, we can make this a real thing.
You are the real
so we
Willy
try to,
Wonka.
Yeah,
It's
the,
like
the flavor lab.
yeah. So we try to keep it open. So if somebody like comes up with a wacky idea, they can like we can actually sit down and like potentially like work it into a schedule. And then otherwise, I am also like a massive planner. So we usually build out the schedule for the year in the previous year, and it's
Wow.
pretty relatively tight. And like try to have some flexibility, but we're still brewing a ton of time. Like that.
How well do you find that works out for you? Like, are you sticking pretty close to the schedule, or is it like it's just nice to have
like
a schedule
noticeably starts drifting.
Yeah.
It like at the beginning of the year, so good,
Yeah.
and then
It's
kind of like
satisfying.
late summer, there's a little bit of drift.
Yeah.
Or something will come up, and I don't
Right.
know. We'll make friends with some new brewery, and they'll be like, hey, like we're coming to your place
Yeah.
and on this week. What do you,
Yeah.
you got space?
Yeah.
Feel like
So there's a little bit of drift with it, but
course.
usually it's pretty good, and also like it helps that we have a team behind us because the brewery itself is very small, but because we've got Tap and Barrel, we also have access to a graphic designer
Right.
and marketing and these folks. So it's a lot easier for them to know what the next 6 beers that are going to be coming out.
Make it cohesive.
So you can
and be
design,
like-
label, and register a product.
how do you come up with all the names for them? Everyone, as on the outset, people like friends and family are always like, "Who comes up with the names for the beers?" And as if that's like the fun thing, but as you guys probably know, it's actually, in my opinion, the worst thing of coming up with your beers, because
100%. It's
Yeah.
you're like, "This is the beer," and you're like on the collab, you're like, "This is what it's gonna be," and then everyone's happy, and then you go to like register it or like just do one Google search, you're like,
Yeah.
Twin Sales did it like 2 years ago, or like whatever. Like it's just always back to the drawing board. But yeah, do you have any
Yeah.
techniques, or like, do you have enjoyment in naming
Yeah.
them?
I hate it. I truly it should derive no joy. But I think it's super important. I think honestly, and like I respect like when you have like a really good name and it clicks, like
Yeah.
you just kind of know it's like, oh, like we
Yeah.
good job. What we do, and if there's a better solution out there, I'd love to hear it. But what we do is we just have a shared Google sheet that we kind of like chuck names into throughout the year, and then build a production schedule usually in November, and then we'll have a meeting kind of like first week of Jan, second week of Jan with everybody
and
who's like
just draw
involved.
lines.
Yeah. It's like honestly like pretty grueling meeting because like it's a slog to go through and name all of these different beers.
Yeah.
Like you're naming and they have to be good names. So then we'll have first, second, third picks and we'll do voting on it.
Oh, wow.
And then inevitably like we'll come back to it like whatever 2 months before the beer's going to be brewed and we like I don't know if this
Yeah.
this name is gonna hit the way we thought it
Hit
would.
a different final gravity, so I don't
Yeah.
really think that fits. Like,
Yeah, it
It's
turns
clear
out it's
now,
an
it's
ISA
supposed to be
instead of an
hazy.
IPA.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's truly the worst. I haven't figured out a solution, but like pretty much regularly, like every week, like somebody will come up and just like finger guns, like I got a name.
Yeah.
And it's I'll put it on the list. It's but I'll
Finger
add
guns
to
has
the
already
list.
been taken. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like who knew that puns were the finite resource that we'd be dealing with? It wasn't CO2 or malt.
No,
it's
no.
just beer puns.
Beer puns, weird quotes.
Yeah.
the what was it? Some comedian or something talking about. He's like, I feel like breweries just sometimes like give a beer a name, not realizing that somebody else is gonna have to say it at the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
I just saw
I can't
that.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do like a brew hall, you do a mixture of your own beers, but then you try to do as many collabs kind of as you can fit in, seems to be, or like an amount that works for you guys, which is super cool.
Yeah.
How do you as like Kerry like approach collabs, and like what is the range that other people bring or don't bring to the collab, that like what's your experience been, and like what have you enjoyed in the past?
So yeah, I think there's lots of ways to approach beer. And for the collaborations, we try to make it as easy as possible for whoever we're working with. So if they like really want to get into water chemistry, I'm 100% there. And
Right.
like, really, that's the stuff I really enjoy. But if somebody just wants to come and kind of hang out and play some arcade games and drink some beers, and that's kind of the extent, like that's fine too. I'm not going to turn somebody away for that. And like I think like in the back of the mind, we always have to like keep in mind like ultimately like this is a beer that we're brewing, our name's going to be on it. We want to make sure that it's excellent. So if things go out like a little bit like too off the rails, we're like, oh, maybe we don't do that.
Gotta use like Jedi mind tricks, you know. You don't want to add glitter.
Yeah. Well, even like we had one person and they're just like, oh yeah, we usually don't really like measure our like lactic acid addition for souring. It's like that's crazy.
That's the one part you don't measure.
Yeah.
Just like,
but yeah, for the most part, it's like working together, and like in a perfect world, I really like that like back and forth of like kind of coming up with a concept and either like building your way up to it or like breaking it down and like how do we get to this idea or this concept. And then and usually it's more work because it's a ton of emails back and forth or multiple like times sitting down and trying to figure it out. But that's my favorite. Like I really like when there's a lot more involvement because I think there's that like buy-in and people are a little bit more passionate that way.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of like, and I always like to figure out, okay, like, oh, this has worked for me in the past, like, or that back and forth. It's nice to pick up, you know, tips and tricks from other brewers as well, or if someone's like doing something quite different or proposing something quite different, it's like that's always revealing. Like, oh, what have you figured out that I haven't tried yet? Like, how is that?
Exactly.
It's like, oh, I tried that, or I tried that malt like 5 years ago. I didn't like it, and it's like, oh, maybe it's changed in the last 5 years.
When it's a brewery that you, ultimately enjoy their beers, and you're like, oh yeah, you have a knack at doing this. How do you get there?
Yeah, that's always rewarding.
And I think too, it's like, yeah, because things are changing like pretty often. Like I don't know, we're happy with the malt supplier that we use, and the reason that I don't use a different malt supplier is because I had a bunch of bad runs in a year, or in a row with them. I was like, the proteins are too high, so I just stopped using them entirely. But that was years ago, and I'm sure that they're much better. So I'm not like the collabs and like because they're usually one-off beers, we don't often rebrew them, but that's like a really good opportunity to be like, you know what, sure, let's give it another chance and try out this thing. And especially if we're working with a brewery that's like passionate about a specific, whatever the specific thing, if they're really into their malts or their advanced hop products or whatever the thing is, like I'm happy to try it out and do something new.
Can you think of one example where they had like someone proposed something and you're kind of like, or like, or just something that was unfamiliar to you and you're like, wow, this is actually something that I want to do. Maybe I do want to add 4 pounds per barrel of hops every time I brew, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Because we usually get like, it's pretty challenging to start our yields because we draw hop pretty hard. So I think that's just the way we live it. And like, there's other breweries that we've talked to and they're like, you're crazy. Like, well, this is your chance to be crazy.
So think of it less like a beer and more of a hop solution.
No, there's only a couple of times that like we've like had to like pull back a little bit from what somebody suggested. We did like a chili beer. It was a chili and pineapple beer, and it was a bit of a scrambly one that we had to brew on a specific day, and it was like much sooner than it should have been.
Of course.
So I was like, all right, I'll take care of literally every component of this. Can you just work on the chili heat? I will do everything else. I'll like order the material, like get everything going. Can you just take on this one aspect? And then they came on the brew day with this like inky black bottle, and like they put a ton of work into it, but this like inky black bottle with a ton of like dried chilies soaked in like Everclear to make like a tincture, and it was just so bad. It's like there's like notes of like leather and tobacco and all of these like could be cool flavors, not super nice in a like a spicy fruity beer. So that was like the one that we had to be like,
let's revisit.
We can maybe not.
Yeah.
That was the big one.
Yeah, that's always a learning curve. Like figuring out what's going to work and then when to like pull back if you have to as well. That's
Yeah. And I will say, like, probably one of the big challenges is just brewing so many different beers is we don't get a chance to, like, if we rebrewed that chili beer
right.
2 more times, it would be so good.
Yeah.
It'd be really, really dialed in. But we probably won't brew it again I don't know if we'll work it with chilies again for another year or two, kind of.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of like hone anything when you're only doing it one at a time.
Yeah.
With that
and you
being
have to, like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
go for it.
No.
I was just going to say, yeah, you have to, like, hit it out of the park every single time for all of these, like, very different beers.
I mean, with that being said, like, you've won a bunch of awards for some fruited sours, just fruit additions in beer, things like that. Are those, like, how are you honing those in? Like, is it?
Yeah. So the way, I guess
I guess
it
in
depends.
reference to the yuzu wit that the yuzu wheat ale that you gave us. So
Yeah.
these guys, yeah.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, voila.
Yeah. So I guess the way that if we're working with something we've never done before, usually I'll figure out what the bricks of the fruit puree or juice or whatever we're using, and then try to say, like, oh, this other beer had X amount of, like, bricks per hectoliter. Let's figure out, like, an equivalent amount, and that usually gets you, like, kind of close to where you need to be, because whenever we're ordering these, like, beers, or sorry, whenever we're ordering the fruits, we're getting, I don't know, X amount of pails of puree.
Right.
So we can get, like, a rough idea on how much we need. And then it really depends on the fruit. Like, I kind of categorize them into like high flavor and low flavor, like strawberry and peach, and all of those would be like low flavor, but passion fruit and pineapple would probably be high flavor. And then you're trying to figure out, like, how you want the acidity to fit with that. Because I don't know, I really enjoy beers that have just, like, a little bit of an edge of like acidity to them. So the yuzu, for example, yuzu wheat, it's not sour by any means, but it's got, like, a little bit of that acidity to it that
kind
makes
of
it
implied
really
from the
quenching.
citrus. And
Yeah. Do you do something to the brewing process to get more acidity in there, or is that just coming through with the fruit?
So it would depend on the fruit,
right?
Like, we also do a ton of sours. So we're kettle sours using lacto. And then if that's the case, then we, like, really got to be intentional about the fruit, like what type of fruit we're going to be adding and when. Because I don't know. Yeah, it depends on the fruit. Like, Azedo got a silver, the World Beer Cup. And it's a sour, like, it's very tart, but it also has pineapple, passion fruit, and then blackcurrant. And, like, blackcurrant's incredibly acidic. Passion fruit's very,
Super
very acidic, and then pineapple's pretty acidic as well. So it's, like, trying to make sure that it's, like, balanced and have, like, the sweetness balance out the acidity.
Yeah.
How do you go about, like, with a beer like that where you're adding a lot of fruit and it's quite acidic? How do you find that there's do you add, or to get more sweetness to balance it out? Because if people don't know, like, when you're adding these fruits to the beers, like, the fruit, as you add it, the day you add it, you're like, oh, this is amazing. But then as it ferments out, you lose a lot of that sweetness from the fruit, like, and that actually is, like, a lot of the flavor of a pineapple. Like, it's when you have a pineapple, it's mostly sugar with, like, pineapple, like, a flavor as well too.
Well, and we said
that
earlier,
sugar,
like,
you're
watermelon
wow, nothing
without
to this
sugar,
fruit, right? So
cucumber.
Is there a way to, like, that you go about to, like, leave some residual sugar?
Try to mash, adjust the mash schedule, but usually we're adding like dextrin or something as well to try to get a bit of body to.
Yeah.
And then we're adding the fruit like late in fermentation.
Right.
And I think, like, because we've done it all, but, like, anytime we add it, like, earlier, or, like, there's even some fruits we've, like, tried adding it to the kettle. But it's like you absolutely, like, lose anything that's, like, delicate and nice about those fruits, and then it's like, all right, that is generic fruit flavor without any, like, the very specific work that you put into processing all this fruit. Having it.
Yeah, I've often thought about, like, what if I just added it on the day one, save me going in later? But you do lose that aromatic flavor to it, especially some of the
I think
stuff.
Yeah, you can be intentional about it too. Like, there's we did a collab with faculty, and we intentionally cooked down the puree, the fruit puree, to try to get that, like, cooked jammy character out of it, which I think like really worked well. But that's a very specific flavor, and it's not the same as like a fresh strawberry. Like that's a cooked strawberry, and it's not bad. It's just very different. It depends on what you're going for.
Oh, I like that idea. It sounds interesting. Nice, like kind of
we've done
thing.
something like that a couple of times.
Plus, strawberry is kind of a tough one to use, anyways, in any regard. But yeah.
And certain fruits, I also will say, like we've tried, like we'll do like a juice or juice concentrate, or they have puree concentrates as well in some formats. But it really depends fruit to fruit, and there's some it's just like never again. Like, not going to try that as a juice concentrate because it just doesn't.
What is it? Right. Watermelon juice concentrate. It was not good when I tried it.
It just tastes like candy.
Yeah. So do you use you just kind of depends on what fruit, what kind of format of like puree or like fruit juice concentrate you'll use depending on what it is?
Yeah, very much so. And I think like you can be intentional. We haven't tried to do both. I don't know. I guess you could try to if you, for some reason, if you really wanted like the body that you get from, I don't know, strawberry puree, if you also wanted to pair it with like a strawberry juice concentrate, maybe you could do something like that. But usually we're just like, all right, never again will we do strawberry. I think strawberry, mango, peach, like all of those as juice concentrates, just like don't work.
No. Some of them, some of them do, some of them don't. The only reason I would use a juice concentrate would be just for better yield, because sometimes you add, like if you add guava, like guava puree is just like thick.
Guava.
So thick. It's amazing. But like you put it in, like say you put in 2 pails, you're pulling out 2 pails later of like thick sludge off of your tank later. You're not getting that, like it doesn't come through as much. It's so thick. But it leaves behind a nice guava flavor, but it's less
but it's still
efficient than like a juice concentrate where it's been juiced, the solids are removed and stuff like that. But
and I will say the other like really successful thing that we've done, and I'm a huge advocate for, is using fresh zest. Because it's not a ton of labor. Like it's absolutely work to zest, I don't know, 8 cases or 10 cases of citrus, but the aroma that you get from fresh zest is really, really distinct. And I've never yet to see a product, either like an oil or frozen zest or any of these other products. They just aren't the same as fresh citrus.
No, fresh lime or lemon is just like pretty unreal.
I think Perfect Puree is the only company I saw that had like a kind of frozen oleo saccharum type of thing, but still it's not the same.
Have you tried it?
In small amounts, but it is.
Yeah, I've tried it. It's good. It's quite good.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
But it can be hard to get. But you can get it through Snowcap. That's what it is. Snowcap. They have or I think they have orange zest and lime zest, but not lemon zest. I can't remember. There's one of those, like the 3 that you want. There's one they don't have, and it's like, why? I don't know. I think they don't have lime is what I think it was. But we use it for something. And it's quite good if you don't want to zest. Like half pallet of oranges or something like
that. It is in a sugar solution, but so it's kind of like like an oleo saccharum kind of.
Yeah, so you do have to kind of like, you can't just throw it in the bright tank like you would probably be doing if you're zesting it directly. You have to, it's up to you, but it does have sugar in it as like a preservative.
Interesting. Because it depends on what you're doing, but depending on the fruit that you're adding, it also like dries out the beer very often, I find. So I'm curious, but either way, I'm absolutely keen on trying new stuff. So
it's pretty good.
Nah, Kerry's a bit of a stickler, very traditionalist.
Just zest.
Just a big zest guy. So do you want to kind of walk us through the beer of the hour there, the Yuzu Wit? Maybe talk about kind of the background of the beer and
its many accolades.
It has won many accolades. Did it win a World Beer Cup award as well?
Got gold for Fruit Week.
That's right.
Last year.
Was it last year?
So just
we at Neighborhood won the gold for the same category the year previous, and then we lost to you guys the next year, which was like kind of hilarious. Of all the categories, of all the places like we
It's
lose to someone in the
very
same
specific
province
one.
in the entire world. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But it was nice. I'd rather lose
Yeah.
to you
In,
than anyone
Yeah.
else.
in case you're wondering, BC's fruit beers are on point.
We just have the greatest
Um,
passion fruit and yuzu that you could
Fruit-
grow
fruit
anywhere
wheat,
in the
that's
world,
the
right?
move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I love the beer. It's kind of my summer beer that I for sure drink the most of our own stuff. And yeah, just a easy drinking, pretty like simple malt base, ton of wheat in there, and then a little bit of coriander. We're using like an Indian coriander. It's a little bit more like citrus forward, I find. Some of the other coriander I find can get kind of, I don't know, savory.
And then are you getting coriander, or are you getting coriander like through BSG, or is it you're
No,
sourcing it?
we in Vancouver, shout out to Afra Market on Main Street.
Hell yeah. That's where I get my black limes.
They've got honestly, like, and without like disparaging any of the other suppliers out there, they just Afra has the freshest, I think, is kind of the big component
Totally.
there. And we've tried it from a couple of other suppliers. There's another one that was really good. It was just like twice as expensive as Afra, so we switched over, and it's been really good. So it's just like really, really fresh coriander, and then we blitz it up, and that all goes into the boil as well.
Nice.
And then we're adding the yuzu. It's a frozen yuzu, so it's not like
not a juice
pasteurized at all.
concentrate, or yeah.
Not a juice. Yeah, it's just straight juice.
Nice.
So, and that goes kind of like late fermentation.
And is it like a
It's good.
true
And
Belgian wit beer? Is that kind of the base?
No.
Or it's just like a kind of
no, like
blank.
probably more like an American wheat as a base,
Yeah.
and then we're using Kvike for it. So hot fermentation.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just to kind of like push those like citrus character.
Using Boss or
Hornindal.
Nice.
And yeah, as I think three brewers who have used a lot of Kvike yeast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a joke there somewhere.
Yeah. 3 hotheads.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I like Kvike a lot. I think aside from like our house yeasts, like that's probably like as a category what we use the most. We don't do a ton of like British or Belgian style beers anyways.
Right.
So like as a category, I think and it kind of plays with our flavors quite well.
Yeah, especially with
for
the
the
fruit
most
beers, I find it's like, why wouldn't you want like a little, like Hornindal to me gives like a lot of pineapple kind of aromatics, and then like this kind of like weird, it's not sweet, like it'll finish dry, but it has this kind of like a little bit of a sweetness to it on the end. Like people always use like caramel as as a descriptor. I don't know if that's the right one, but it's kind of like I don't know, almost like a light honey sweetness, even though it's not actually sweet. It's dry, but yeah, I enjoyed. I don't use Hornindal much anymore, but when I did, it was really nice in that kind of style of beer.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like it's I don't know. I always liken it to like dry, like the taste of dried oranges. Like that kind of. It's not sweet at all, but it's like that like citrus fruit character.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like.
Nice.
So I see you keep drinking from a glass that I can only assume you brought back from the Czech Republic.
Oh
did.
yeah. That's a shame. I have the same glass upstairs.
For those who don't know, Darren also was in the Czech Republic last year. But yeah, maybe you guys can both talk about Czech beers, your experience, your thresholds for diacetyl.
Yeah, I guess I want to know how was your trip, and did you drink the most beer you've ever had in your entire life in 1 week? Because that's what my experience was on that trip.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was really good, and I feel like I'm pretty good at drinking beer. Like I feel like I'm
you can keep
pretty good at it.
I'm pretty sure it says on the Brewhall, like, meet the staff members, your superpower is not getting a hangover.
Yeah. So
I got a funny story
was,
about that later from Niagara.
One time.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. There's a lot of folks that were like really struggling on the bus the next day, every single day for 7 days in a row. But I feel like I'm pretty good at drinking. Everybody on the bus was very good at drinking, but just casually people at like tables beside us would be at like 2 to 1 drinking beers, like way surpassing the amount of beer that we could drink.
Yeah.
And like not for an occasion, just really casually drinking twice as
I
much.
think I remember seeing it's like most pints per capita, but like by
Oh
double.
yeah. I
Like,
think they're up
We-
to, or they're down. They were up. Like Czech Republic as the country is still they drink the most beer per capita. They were at one point like 130 liters per person. I think they're down to 110 liters per person, or 100, whatever.
a year.
And they're very disappointed
But
about
still.
it. It's probably
Someone's
good
got to
for
start
their
pulling
health,
their
but-
weight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's interesting because like the culture of drinking beer is so prevalent, and we would see people drinking like absolutely like heavily drinking at 9 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning, just walking down the street casually or on the bus or wherever. They would just
And is it like, within that, I guess that brings another question. Like, is there a demographic, or is it just like everybody, like men,
everybody.
women,
Yeah.
like?
I think the other thing to note
drinking
was like
age and-
when my experience was like everyone was also drinking beer. Like just like everyone's drinking beer. Like no one. I mean, there's of course there's places where people are drinking wine and spirits too, but just the sheer amount of people that are just drinking beer, men, women. I was gonna say children, but you know, less so.
Yeah, there's two big things that really stood out for me, kind of culture wise. One was like the education that people have, just like every common person would have about beer. So every beer is going to usually list the starting gravity in Plato on every beer menu, which is kind of a crazy thing. Like if you're not really in the industry, it's not a thing that would come up in common life out here. So that was really surprising to me. And then, it's, I don't know. It was the other, like, there's one like professor that we were talking to. He went out drinking with some friends the night before. We had a second day of the course with him, and he was like, oh yeah, like I went to this brewery or went to this bar, didn't like any of the beer, so I just drank non-alc all night. And it's like a crazy concept that like non-alc is like really, really big out there as well, and it's growing pretty quickly. But they would care to drink not good non-alc beer more than drink
Bad.
not so good alcoholic.
Crazy.
That is cool.
Yeah, which is like a different thing that like, oh, I would just drink literally anything else in the world
Yeah.
instead of a non-alc
I mean,
beer
this
for the most
doesn't.
part.
This relates, but doesn't relate to the quality of the beer necessarily. But when Kerry and I were at Niagara on the Lake there at the conference, I'm pretty sure it was Kerry that convinced everybody to tap the other keg, which we then found out later was all non-alc beer. Which might be part of his secret to never getting a hangover.
Sneak them in,
Yeah.
you'll never know. That's very funny. I didn't realize it was non-alc beer. That's very funny.
The keg.
I thought we were getting like kind of like kicked out, like they cleared all of the bottles off all of the tables, and we're like, oh, there's still beer left in the keg. So,
Yeah,
that's very
like a
funny.
true brewer, you're like sniff out any beer like a greyhound. It's like if there's
Yeah.
beer, they're
Yeah.
not literally kicking us out. Yeah, we'll find the beer and we'll drink it together. Yeah.
You can't kick me out. My glass is full.
Yeah. Did you find that a lot of the beer that you drank had varying amounts of diacetyl when you were there?
Yeah. I don't know. I think coming off of that trip, I'm now like a lot more understanding of it. Like here, it's just like kind of a red flag as soon as you have it, and you're like, bad beer. Like instantly, like this must be a bad beer because it's got diacetyl. Versus over there, it's like we can kind of like understand the purpose that it holds in a bit of a weird
Almost
way,
like an
I
implied
don't know.
body in a otherwise light beer.
Yeah, and like in the same way that like sometimes like a little bit of sulfur is kind of nice in a lot, and like not every time by far, and too much is way too much, but you can kind of understand the purpose of it. That being said, there's like an incredible amount of diacetyl, and it wasn't every single beer, but it was like really, really prevalent.
Yeah, it was strange when you would have like something just so like intensely diacetyl, like it could be like a spiked beer. And you're like, this is great, right? And you're like, oh, it's 9 a.m. But we're here, and I got to be polite, and I got to drink this beer. So here we go. And yeah, so that I was, but you're right. Like I think that's, it's definitely not held in the same like disregard as how we in North America view diacetyl. It's definitely built in there, and they just view it as something that people find either preferable or not, and they assume you'll drink it no matter what. Really, it's just less focused on, I think, than we are here. Like, they're so focused on decoction and like sourcing really good ingredients and all these other things. And some brewers will say they focus on diacetyl, and some are just like, it doesn't matter to them generally, I would say, as much. And if it is in there, I found that they would advocate for it, obviously, because it's in there.
It's there.
But yeah, just not in this held in the same like a different viewpoint on it as like either an off flavor or just a component, I guess. It kind of reminds me of like saison beer too, where you can have like really kind of almost clean wheat beers, or you can have like super funky, like, who's to say that like a Guz is really like, it's got really funky flavors as well. Like, it's just personal preferences whether or not that's going to be someone enjoys that or not. There's like super crazy funky phenolics as well that definitely range in intensity and how much rubber hose it has and stuff. There's a beer for everyone, I guess.
It's like a touch of horse plank is okay, but too much turns goaty and it's no good.
Or like, I don't know, I have a nostalgia for like skunky beer because I drank just so much, stuff in green bottles in a formative time. So it's like, can't hate on everyone's thing. Yeah. Very interesting.
With the kind of rounding in here, like with the BC craft beer industry, what does get you excited moving forward, with your perspective? Like, how do you think we can improve?
I don't think we're through it yet. I think there's still like quite a bit of growing up that the industry needs to do. And I think kind of like, I don't know, I think it's that like greater than the sum of its parts thing again, but you can't just make excellent beer. You also have really good branding behind it. You have to have a good team that work in the community. I think you have to like be doing more than just make good beer,
right?
Which is kind of good, because I think it's important for people to be.
I mean, I think a lot of like alcohol is about creating a community space, in the beverage industry in general.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm like excited for, but also what I think can be improved. And I think there's still space for more breweries, but I think if I was opening a new brewery, I'd want to be like really intentional about how I fit in the space and like ecosystem around me. And I want there to be a small brewery in every small town. Like, I think that's like a really good thing to have, because you are that hub.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can get by with being just being a small brewery in a place and making terrible beer and not supporting your neighbors.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna survive that way.
Definitely. I think that's it. You bring up a good point of like these are here, like Azlan said, like a third space for people, but also like supporting the people. Like, it's a luxury to get a craft beer, so you should be giving back to those people that are kind of like putting their money into your business too, and supporting like foundations and charities, or just even just local things happening that are good for the community, right?
You need a brewer, a baker, and a candlestick maker.
That's right.
And I think it's kind of like, I don't think you could get by like that, like ethos of like, oh, I only brew the beer that I want to drink. Like, I don't think that works anymore, because somebody's got to buy your beer ultimately.
Yeah.
So, like being a little bit more reflective and thinking about what people want and how you can support them with that. So I think, that's probably what I'm excited for, but also what I think we should collectively be doing better. And I think industry wide, like, if we don't, we're going to lose a lot more breweries.
Yeah. Like collective wise, like, if it takes like a couple bad apples to ruin the bunch. And it's also like, collectively, if we're working together, which we as an industry now, like we've been a more maturing industry, and we are getting better at working together to like talk to the government, advocate for these like things that support the breweries as well. So that's what excites me too, is like we have like a guild that's like actually formed and works pretty well to get us funding from the government and advocate on our behalf, but it's always a tough slog as well, especially these days.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't think that there's like too many breweries. I don't think that's the place that we're at. It's just everybody, if you want to be in it, you got to be better, and like this is your opportunity, and like figure out what better is for you, but also like better for overall, because I don't know 2000 and what 16, 17, 18, like it was really easy just make beer. You just make beer and people just buy it. So good.
We made so much Belgian beer back then. People bought it. It was great.
Back when you could sell a saison.
Dry hop Belgian beer was the thing.
It's a simpler time. But I think like changing tastes are real for sure, but also like it's not to say that we're out of I think we're still in it, and I think people need to figure out where they fit in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
So for anybody getting into the industry, how do you think they like should stand out? Like any new brewer, or anybody wanting to be a brewer or work in brewing in general, whether that's sales or
I would
canning lines.
If I it's always a if I was gonna like recommend it, if somebody wanted to open a brewery, I would 1000% say like absolutely work at a bunch of breweries first at different sizes, because there's different skill sets that you're going to be working with at different scale breweries, and I think that's incredibly important. Like to go from homebrewing to running your own brewery it's an incredibly steep learning curve, and also like super dangerous. There's lots of like really big risks doing that. And then generally like the community is really supportive and helpful. So like everybody's willing to talk to you and chat and help, because collectively, and myself included, like I just want to drink better beer.
Yeah.
So I would like everybody to make better beer so I can drink better beer.
Yeah. Sucks when you travel a little bit too far away from home and you're like, oh man.
But like, I don't know, my wife's in the States, so we go down to Washington pretty often. It's kind of cool going to like these like very small towns, and there'll be like a brewery and everybody rolls up with like their 2 growlers on a Friday, and it's like it's that space. And like I think there's a lot of space for that. And if you're not in like a more rural setting and you can't be that community hub, I think you just have to be like really focused on what you're trying to do and how you're going to go about doing that. And then work in a bunch of breweries. And I truly believe like most people would be willing to help you out as much as they can. So I don't know if anybody after this, if somebody wants to reach out and talk and has any questions, I'm happy to support like whoever they are, because again, I just want better beer out in the world.
Nice. We'll forward all our emails to you.
Send them on my way. I don't know. I think if somebody's like willing to give you the time of day and like go to the effort of reaching out, like I'm happy to talk with them on a call. I also have spent so much time on scam phone calls, but you know, they're putting in the efforts on the effort.
Yeah.
You you didn't go to school for brewing specifically.
No.
So I mean, that's one of the things. It's like I think there's a lot of understanding there. Just for all of us, like we've learned from our peers.
Yeah.
So we're pretty fortunate to have that open line of communication. And
And we've learned from other people in the industry as well. Like that's why I always try, if people have a question for me, like I'm always giving back, because I had questions before and I went out and they were answered by other people in the industry before me. So it's like anything. And I think that's what like Kerry, you're saying too. It's like, we're happy to give back, because people spent a lot of time with us at one point to tell us the proper way to carbonate a beer. And we also had to tell them so that they, have a proper PRV on their tank, and so that everyone stays safe and no one's on CBC News in a bad way.
Yeah. And also I will say, I think like a lot of the literature is getting really good now. Because I remember earlier on, like in the homebrewing days, just like voraciously reading everything, and it's like a lot of this information is contradictory, and like it was hard to even judge what like the level of skill that some of these people would be saying. It's like, that's like, I'm sure you physically could sanitize with just vinegar. I'm sure physically you could do that, but there's a correct method. That's not it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Like so much time spent on like pro brewer forums in like the early 2010s, and it's like, Oh, we have so
Yeah.
much more information now, and it's all. I always say to people, they're like, "Where do I learn?" I'm like, "Just it's there. It's on the internet. Go look for it."
Mhm.
Or like, there's some really great books now. The BA has like tons of really good brewing books. Like, it's all there if you just want to put the time in to learn it. So, yeah, get after it.
It's a world of knowledge at your fingertips.
Yeah, you just
Or
need a
just
library
or
card.
just email Kerry.
Yeah, or email.
Yeah.
Carry.
Send me an email. I'm happy to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just in closing this out, we've talked a lot about brewing. But yeah, what takes up your time outside of brewing?
It's just beer. It's all beer. No, I don't know. It's one of those wacky things that like, yeah, we went down to Seattle this last weekend and we fit in like a little 4 brewery crawl as well because
Why not?
that's what we
Yeah.
do. Aside from that, yeah, we do like a ton of like baking and like other fermentation, so like miso, kimchi, sauerkraut, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's on my radar, but soon I'm gonna try to make some soy sauce.
Oh,
So yeah, making stuff. I like how beer is really finite, but it exists and then it's gone. So I don't know. It'd be really nice if I did any kind of permanent sculpture or like making anything that'll have a lasting image, but in the world. But I also like that impermanence of
Right.
it. So yeah, just food ferments and all that fun stuff.
Consumables.
great.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you guys? Are you like deep in the beer life, or what do you do for
Well,
fun?
enough that we've like started a podcast, so I guess I was like telling people like, yeah, I started a podcast. They're like, about what? I'm like, yeah, it's about beer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this weekend I'm planning to go pick mushrooms. Yeah. I've got no morals, so let the world burn so I can get some morels.
Right.
Yeah, no, gonna go pick some morels hopefully this weekend. I started some kimchi, and I've got a cute little dog that I hang out with. That's
Yeah,
and bikes.
Good life.
And bikes. Yeah.
nice. Well, I got
And you've got humans.
little kiddos that are taking a lot of my time, and I don't know if you guys know, but it's Mother's Day coming up or soon.
Oh, yeah.
So I got that happening this weekend. That'll be good. We'll probably go to a brewery like we always do. Our kids now know
Classic.
the names of all the breweries in town, which we realize they're like, why don't we go to Cannery? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you know all because that's what we do as well. We just go to the other breweries in town or our own.
Did they have favorites? Like, I think
they have favorites
that's amazing.
for sure. Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah. Abandoned Rail is definitely a favorite because they have like a nice like little swing and a slide, a little like I wouldn't go so far as a kids area because they wouldn't want that either. Then people don't come if there's a kids area, those people that don't have kids, which I understand, but it's a pretty good spot to like, you have your beer and your kid is like 10 feet away from you for a bit, which is just perfect. So
nice.
we usually end up doing that on a weekend.
Yeah, I think it's nice for us, but just for people in general as a way to like guide your tourism. Like usually good beer leads to good food, leads to conversation. It's like we were saying, a community hub. So like hopefully you're gonna meet people in the area who hopefully have something to share and something to say. Probably thanks to some of that social lubricant.
Yeah. It is nice. Yeah, you can go like if you're traveling, go to a brewery and talk to like one of the servers there, like whoever is your server, your bartender, and be like, hey, like where's a good place to eat? Because they probably know where the best places to eat are in town, or they're at least like go to this place that'll be not busy and stuff like that. Where if you're coming in pretty blind, it's nice to have that like local touch.
Our big move is whenever we're traveling is we'll go to a brewery because usually we've heard of a couple of them and we'll have some on a list. And just like it's like, all right, we have no plans, and just be led to the next one. Just talk to somebody and be like, hey, we've got 3 days. Where should we go next? And continue and have that recommendation train go forward.
Yeah, it's hard to know like reading online or people's reviews like what's actually gonna be good for beer. Definitely talking to someone that has a good taste for beer is the way to go for sure.
Well, Kerry,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the time. This is great.
Yeah.
Until next time, you're just a couple blocks away from me, but we seem to get together in
This
places
is all
on the
a
other
ruse to
side.
get Aslan out
Yeah.
there into the world to meet
Yeah.
meet
Yeah.
his neighbors in the industry.
Which is funny. Kerry and I have
Thanks.
talked about it. We actually spend more time, had more beers in Ontario than we have based in
Right.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
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 We're just
Well,
up the street.
Kerry, I might have to
This is
cash
really
in
good.
on that
Yeah.
collab too sometime soon. So
Whenever you're down in town, I'll make space on the production schedule.
not
Don't
bad.
don't worry.
You
I'm
gotta
used
plan
to
a
it.
year out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
put me in for 2025 at this point.
Kerry's
Yeah.
booking out
Yeah.
till mid 2025
He probably has one space for a little old me.
Thanks.
We'll see.
We'll find it.
Sounds good. Well, we'll talk. But yeah, thanks for being on the show. We'll release this sooner rather than later. And yeah, so our guest has been Kerry Dyson from Brewhall. If you want to support him and the beer he makes, go visit him at Brewhall in Vancouver. It's that massive building that says Brewhall on the outside of it. I don't know, it's
Main
out
second,
in
basically.
the
Main and
Olympic
second.
Village area there. I guess I don't know. The guy from Penticton giving advice on where things are in Vancouver, but
Near Science World.
near Science World.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell us World of Science.
the Google will tell you
Yeah.
where it is. But yeah,
Yeah.
go try the beers. They're great beers, and yeah, we kind of touched on it a bunch, but like multiple award-winning beers. You're always getting awards, which is nice to see. World Beer Cup awards. That Kolsch is always picking up Kolsch at every BC Beer Awards. It's nice to see. So yeah, congrats to you on all those, and yeah, check out Brewhall if you're out there. And yeah, if you're also looking for more beer, check out Main Street Brewing. Have some Aslan's.
Just
Just up the
stumble
street.
away.
Just
Yeah.
stumble away, and then yeah, check out some neighborhood beer if there's some in your local liquor store in Vancouver, and if not, then ask for it. Yeah, a mixed pack that's coming out soon, so check that out. And yeah,
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
cool.